The Education Collaborative was envisioned by Chancellor University back in 2016 when in thinking about our skills strategy as a university, we asked ourselves, how quickly can we really bring about this African Renaissance if we're just doing it within ourselves at Chancellor University? So in thinking around this goal for transformation, we asked ourselves, could we rather bring along other institutions on the continent who buy into this similar vision to work together to really rapidly and quickly scale the outcomes for students on the continent. And so in achieving that, we've had to work through the differences in culture, the differences in context, the differences in types of institution, right? So those have really been our biggest challenges. And in tackling that, we've had to take a very organic approach to building the relationships and the connections that we've established in the Education Collaborative. So I would say the university leaders really have been our biggest ally, working through the kinks together, working through how to collaborate more efficiently and effectively, and helping us to determine where to prioritize resources and efforts to ensure the best outcomes. Also, a very notable ally has been the MasterCard Foundation in believing in this vision, in this initiative, and supporting through its resourcing for the next few years. In the last 3 years, we have been rolling out our 10-year strategy, ending in 2030. In doing that, we've really figured out how best to set up a regional hub, because the Education Collaborative is organized or implemented through regional hubs to drive further contextualization and relevance of the solutions and the sharing that happens. And in the last 3 years, one of the biggest successes is setting up these regional hubs. We set up East African Hub with about 10 institutions being the anchors in that region. And then we set up with the West Africa regional hubs with close to 15 higher education institutions really driving priorities in that region. So the future looks like institutions seamlessly working towards one goal for transformative higher education in Africa. And I think that's one of the biggest goals we are working towards in the Education Collaborative, to build a certain culture of trust such that institutions at any point feel like they can rely on each other to learn, to address challenges, and to make progress in giving quality education to the students that come through their systems and structures.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, depending on which time zone you're joining us from, and welcome to today's entrepreneurship speaker session. We'll be starting shortly, and continue joining. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you're joining us from, maybe your name and the institution and which country, and then we'll start off shortly. Thank you again for taking the time.
Good afternoon. Hi, Nkari. Hi, Jody. And good afternoon from the land of 1,000 hills, Rwanda, Kigali. Thank you for taking the time. Apologies for the background noise. It's just started raining here. And thank you for the time to join us today in our wonderful session around entrepreneurship and innovation on our campuses. Today, I have an honor to have Dr. Vincent Ogutu, the current Vice Chancellor of Strathmore University, to join us all and share with us his experience and his innovation around the innovation algorithm, which is a tool that he developed. And we are going to have a moment with him so that he can share that. So, with your permission, allow me to introduce Dr. Vincent Ogutu, who is currently the Vice Chancellor of Strathmore University in Kenya. An organizational behavior scholar, Dr. Ogutu specialized in psychology of meaningful work while studying at Rutgers University. He investigated how social entrepreneurs come to see their work as a calling. Not content with studying how meaning is constructed, Dr. Ogutu tries some of the best theory out when helping individuals and organizations find or create meaning, including at Strathmore, where he is currently. He has been invited to give keynote addresses on the subject at IESE Business School in Spain and also in Ireland, Nigeria, Uganda, Germany, as well as Uruguay, including a TEDx talk in Barcelona. While studying entrepreneurs in New York, he was drawn by them into the field of innovation, presenting his own tech innovation at Google in New York and creating the innovation algorithm. In the process, he has since taught this new system of innovating on 3 continents and is regularly invited to train innovation teams in companies in Kenya. A passionate educator, Dr. Ogutu dedicates himself to inspiring people and organizations to live a life of purpose, transforming the communities around them using business and innovation as a force for good. Without further ado, Dr. Vincent, welcome. Maybe you can take a minute or so briefly to speak about your passion a little bit before we jump into the conversation. Dr. Vincent, welcome.
Thank you for having me, George. Actually, you just reminded me of something I learned in a TED Talk about how to introduce yourself. So you don't introduce yourself by giving your name and where you work. That's the standard way of doing it. And people immediately forget your name and it's useless. So what I learned is you start by saying why you do what you do. Just focus on the why. And when their mind is blown away by the why, you know, I'm responsible for saving about 1 million lives a month. Then they look at you like, who are you? What kind of work do you do? And now you explain how your work actually makes you do that. So in my case, I'm actually a treasure hunter. I hunt for treasure. That's what I do most of the time. What kind of treasure do I look for? Ideas that are so powerful that they can change people's lives in incredible ways. And when I find such an idea, I get very excited and I try it out on myself, first of all. And if it actually works, I get even more excited. And then I can't wait to do the other half of what I do, which is to share the treasure. In other words, I'm a teacher. I research to get the good ideas, and then I teach to share the ideas. So that's basically who I am, Vincent Ogutu, teaching here at Strathmore University.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ogutu, for that wonderful introduction. I think I'll take that tip. Before we start, I would like to encourage everybody, if you can put on your video, please feel free to do so. And as we continue the conversations, kindly feel free to use the chat to post in your questions as well as comments, which we are going to be picking up along. So, Dr. Vincent, I know we have had a lot of conversations and through the mentorship that I continue to receive from you. For those who are not aware, and I know I've received this question before even we came to the session, the innovation algorithm, what is it? And how did it come to you? You know, what was that process that you went through to come about the innovation algorithm?
So the innovation algorithm is practically a step-by-step system on how to think outside the box. Most people tell you, come on, think outside the box, think differently, think outside the box. And we all know how it will feel when we actually think outside the box. When we see someone actually do it, we're all amazed, like, wow. But when you're asked, think outside the box, what sort of a demand is that? Like, what are you asking me to do? Like, I thought it's something that happens by accident. like I thought outside the box. Suddenly I found myself thinking outside the box. So for somebody to suggest to you that, oh, it's actually a system, you can actually go step by step, and by the time you reach step 4, you have thought outside the box, like you can program it. So that's what I basically came up with when I came up with the innovation algorithm. I came up with a system which, if you follow, you will think outside the box, and you will not only do so, but do so pretty quickly. So within a few minutes, actually, you should be able to think outside the box. So everyone is thinking a certain way, and you know how they're all thinking, and then you can deliberately, consciously decide to think outside the box and actually do it. So it's a step-by-step algorithm or formula that shows you how to think outside the box.
Thank you, Dr. Ogutu. So I know you have talked about the innovation algorithm, it being the step-by-step. And one thing for me, I would like maybe others to also appreciate the process. How did you come about it? How did you invent it? What was the process? What was the inspiration? What was the driving factor that allowed you to go from envisioning it to implementing it?
Okay, if you have a few minutes, I can tell you the story. So,
Yes.
Great. You introduced me by saying I was studying social entrepreneurs in the New York, New Jersey, tri-state area, which means I would spend a lot of time with them. I would go to incubators, accelerators, I would go to hackathons, conferences, anywhere where I could find social entrepreneurs and basically just observe them, study them from a psychological standpoint. That's what I was doing. So I was peacefully going about my research until I started meeting this man from Google who was called Todd Nakamura. And every time he saw these entrepreneurs, he would tell them that he had started an initiative that was like a Google TED Talk. So the same way with TED, ideas worth sharing, Google has something called Solve for X, where X is a complex problem. So in Google, if you tell someone what's your X, you're not asking who's your ex-boyfriend or girlfriend. What you're asking is, what is the X? What is the problem that gets you out of bed every day? What problem are you trying to solve? And so we all remember from our high school mathematics, you're told, here's a problem, X is in the middle of the Y's and the A's and the B's and the D's, and then it's all wrapped up together and you're supposed to unravel it and make X the subject of the equation. In other words, solve for X. So Google had this talk where they would invite you to speak about your X. So if you had a radical solution to a complex problem, which is called an X, then they would invite you to, on a Solve for X platform, to speak about it. So basically, Todd was organizing a Solve for X forum, and he was looking for entries. It was a competition. You enter your crazy ideas, and he and a team would vet those ideas, pick the craziest ones, and then those would be invited to speak at Google. So every time he saw these entrepreneurs, he would be like, come on, there's a Solve for X competition coming. I want you guys to send me your ideas. And then I would keep quiet. Then he would turn to me and say, Vincent, I want you to send your idea. And I would tell him, Todd, I'm not a techie. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not an engineer. I don't know why you're asking me to do this. And he always gave me the same answer. He would say, anyone can innovate. So I want you to send me your X. And I would ask him, so what's your X? And I think his X was to make the deaf hear. So he was going to come up with something that would make the deaf hear. And there was somebody who wanted to make the blind see. Those are complex problems. So for anyone to even come up with a solution, that's what Google either calls an X or a moonshot. A moonshot is an idea like, let's send a person to the moon and bring them back. And when you're thinking at a moonshot level, your brain is operating not just 3x, 5x, 10x, maybe 100x. It's crazy. So he was looking for ideas that were crazy. And I kept avoiding him and saying, I don't have an idea. Talk to these guys. These are the entrepreneurs. But one morning, I actually got an idea. I got a tech idea. So I emailed him and I said, how's this for a moonshot? And his immediate reply was, it's definitely crazy enough, but there's no way you can do it, like impossible. So then I continued. I was in the library and doing my research. So I just kept on doing my work. Then after 3 hours, I decided to check my emails again. And I see another email from Todd. And this time he's telling me, Vincent, you won't believe this. I was in the Google office in New York today, and they asked me, what are the crazy ideas you have heard from people this week? And I mentioned your idea. And they got so excited. They were like, wow, what a great idea. How is he going to do it? And I told them, that's just it. He can't. It's impossible. And they told me, look, if he ever finds a way to do it, please let us know. We're very excited about this. So then he tells me, so Vincent, all I'm telling you is Google loves your idea, but even they see that it's impossible. And in case you don't believe me, I've attached 2 articles that explain why it's impossible. But if you manage to find the solution, sure enough, Google loves it. So in my case, I couldn't read any other part of his email except the part that said, Google loves your idea, or Google is excited about your idea. That's the only part of the email that I could read. The rest about it's impossible, it's explained here, that was somehow not registering. So then I thought, my gosh, Google actually liked something I said and I'm nobody. Okay, let me read what this impossible thing is all about. So I stopped everything I was doing. I read the 2 articles, and you're not going to believe this. 5 minutes after I finished reading the second article, I got a solution. And I quickly typed my answer to Todd, and I said, Todd, it seems to me everyone is expressing this problem in the following way, and then giving these 2 solutions. Now, what if I re-express the problem in this other way, and then I solve it differently like this? And then Todd immediately writes, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. You've cracked it. You've solved it. Enter the competition. Please send me your pitch deck. Enter the competition. So what I did is I took 1 week off my doctoral studies. I didn't want to send a pitch that sounded amateurish. I didn't have the vocabulary. So for 1 week, I was studying this stuff, learning the vocabulary, so that by the time I sent my pitch deck, it would look halfway decent and more technical. And out of 100 entries that they received, I was one of 7 moonshot pioneers who were invited to pitch their idea at Google. You can find it on YouTube. So if you search for my name, Vincent Ogutu, and Google, or Vincent Ogutu teleportation, or Vincent Ogutu holograms, then you should find it there. It's like a 7 minutes presentation, and then 7 minutes Q&A with 4 panelists asking me questions. And there are like 200 techies and venture capitalists in the audience. So that was a game changer for me. I couldn't believe this was happening. And try and put yourself in my shoes, please. You're this student, you're not a techie, you're not an engineer, you just happen to be mingling with these entrepreneurs. And then you get an idea that Google is excited about and that wins a competition, and you're invited to speak about it at Google. So this was actually not happening. It was like a dream. So different reactions. My Kenyan friends see this video on YouTube and they write to me, they say, excuse me, Vincent, I thought you were studying organizational behavior, psychology, management. What is this holograms, teleportation stuff all about? Did you get confused? Are you lost? Are you focusing on your studies? please focus on your studies. Don't start playing games. We know people go to America, they get confused. Please just focus on your studies. So that's what my friends from Kenya were telling me. But my American friends would come and say, oh my gosh, I saw your video. So when are you dropping out? Then I say, what do you mean? So when are you dropping out of school and going ahead with your startup? And then I said, I'm not dropping out. They said, but you've got to. This is what people do in moments like this. They drop out. They focus. This is like $1 million idea. If you don't do it now, it'll go. And this is like, at this point, it makes no sense for you to continue with your PhD. You should be dropping out and creating a startup. So I asked them, why do I need to drop out? And they said, you think you can get ideas like this every day? This is a once-in-a-lifetime idea. When you get a once-in-a-lifetime idea, you drop everything you're doing and you pursue it. So I asked myself, because I'm a researcher and all of you here, most of you here are researchers. When somebody makes a claim, what is backing that claim? When they are so sure that this is the kind of idea you can get once in a lifetime, what is their data set? How are they reaching that conclusion? And I asked myself, is it true? Intuitively, it seems true. But then when I looked at what happened that day, I got an idea at breakfast. It was a brilliant idea. I sent it to this guy at Google. He admits it's a brilliant idea, but tells me it's impossible. Then he sets the challenge by sending me articles explaining why it's impossible. 5 minutes after I finished reading those 2 articles, I sent him another brilliant idea. Now, those are 2 once-in-a-lifetime ideas happening to the same person on the same day. Now, what am I supposed to conclude? Because definitely it's disconfirming the claim that you can only get a brilliant idea once in your life. Now, hopefully it means I'm a genius, but I knew that wasn't true because I was actually studying with geniuses. I mean, I had guys who were so bright, I couldn't compare myself to them. So I knew what a genius looks like. And I knew, no, wait. I'm the same Vincent from Kenya. I just don't know how I did it. Like, I have no idea, but I'm sure I'm not a genius. And I actually, but there must be a system. I must be using a thought process that even I don't know I'm using. But being such a good teacher, I told you that's how I identify. I'm a treasure hunter, I'm a teacher. If I understand something, then I can explain it to anybody. There's no way I can fail to explain something to anyone if I understand it. So I just thought, my gosh, if there's a thought process I'm following, if I discover this thought process, this is the treasure I was talking about, finding powerful ideas. If I can just understand it, then it means I can teach it. And that could change the world because I could make people do what I did just as easily as I did it. And so I did research. I asked myself, what thought process did you follow? What emotions did you experience? I basically looked at everything, including what I ate for breakfast, just in case that data was relevant. I was just looking at all the data available. It's a one-man data set, but I'm looking at everything that happened that day, every step that I followed. And then I said, wait a minute, this looks like an algorithm. This looks like a formula. I think I know how I did it. So now either I'm fitting the data to my own actions and it only works for me, or it can work for everybody. And as you know, there's only one way of knowing. You have to try it on other people. You have to perform an experiment. So I went to the US on a Fulbright scholarship. One of the things they used to do is to ask us to volunteer. Every semester, they would tell us, could we invite you to go to a school and talk about Africa or talk about your career and talk to these high school students? So they invited me to talk about water problems in Africa. So I said, I could, but it's not as interesting as talking about innovation. So they told me, innovation? Do you know something about innovation? And then I said, lately I do. I think I could run a very interesting session on innovation. I've invented this formula. I want to try it out on them. So the Fulbright guy said, fine, sure. We'll take you to a school in the Bronx, which is, you know, inner city. These are poor kids. They're not considered bright, which is not true. They just don't have the resources. So basically like a lower tier school, public school in the Bronx. I show up in the morning. I tell them, hi guys, I'm from Africa. I'll tell you a bit about Africa, but I'll also tell you about how to solve complex problems because I discovered a way to do it. So I'm not an engineer, I'm not a genius, but I know how to do this. So are you guys game? You want to learn this? They said, yeah, let's do it. So I taught them the algorithm. When I finished, which was 45 minutes, less than 45 minutes, I told them, okay, now you know the secret. Let's create a shopping list of complex problems. So I want you to tell me problems you wish you could solve. And I don't want easy problems. I don't want obvious problems. I want problems that have never been solved. And I don't care if the brightest guys from Harvard, MIT, Stanford, Oxford, Cambridge, I don't care if they've never solved it. We are going to solve it right here, right before your eyes. So let's create a shopping list. So we started shopping for complex problems and I was writing them on the board, problem number 1, problem number 2. After I reached 5, I said, okay, we don't have too much time. We can only solve one problem. Which of these 5 problems do you really want to solve? Which one means the most to you? So they voted, they picked one. Then we started using the algorithm. Just when I started, one of the students says something, I say something back to him, and then he says something totally crazy, which only I understand. And I'm like, oh my gosh, are you saying what I'm saying? He says, yes. Then he gets so excited, he rushes to the front of the class. Then the two of us start drawing this machine in the air. So what I'm telling him is what you're saying is you do this and then this thing pops out of this machine and does this. And he says, yes, that's what I'm saying. So then now everyone looks at him in amazement. The whole class is staring at him. And then I tell him, look, I don't know how you did it. Congratulations. I can see this idea of yours having applications in airports, in shopping malls. I actually can't believe nobody has ever thought about this before. If I were you, I would get a patent straight away. Just from the patent alone, you could make money. And then the fellow becomes a high school student all over again, 14 years old. He says, oh, no, I wouldn't even know how to go for a patent. So why don't you get the patent and then we share 50-50. So I laughed. I told him, you know, I have my idea, which somebody asked me to get a patent on, which I still haven't done. So why don't you get your patent and I get my patent? And so then he laughs. Then I tell him, by the way, can I use your story when I'm teaching innovation in future? And he says, no, because they'll steal my idea. Then I said, but the whole class heard you speak. Everyone knows your idea. But anyway, I'll respect your wishes. I will never tell anyone what you invented. It's up to you to reveal it to the world. So then I went for lunch. I came back in the afternoon. I was given a different class to teach. Now I was super confident because apart from me using the algorithm, somebody else had successfully used it. So I walked into the class with what you might call reckless confidence. So I just walk in, hi guys, my name is Vincent Ogutu, I'm from Africa. I'm here to tell you about Africa. And I'm also here to teach you how to solve complex problems. Now, I am not a genius. I am not an engineer. I am not a techie, but I can solve complex problems because I invented a formula that shows you how to do it. And I taught it to the class this morning, you're from the other class, and they came up with a patentable solution to a complex problem. So I know this formula works. Do you guys want to hear it? And so I taught them. Then the same thing. We came up with a shopping list of complex problems. They picked the one they wanted to solve. And this time it was a girl who solved it. And it was so good. And in her case, I asked her, may I please tell people, because I want to be teaching innovation from now on. And I think your example would be fantastic. So she said, fine, yeah, go ahead and do it. So do we have time, George? I could tell you what her solution was.
Yes, Prof, briefly, so that we get now to the technical part of it.
Okay, great. So which problem was she solving? At that time in the United States, there were incidents of people of color, minorities being shot by the police, quite often in error. They thought they were armed, they were not. But by the time they shot, they'd killed the person, it was too late. So she was like, how can I prevent this chaos from happening? Because now there are riots all over the US because of these people who've been killed. How can I prevent innocent people being killed by the cops in error? That was the mandate. We had to solve that problem. So they started playing around with different ideas. The first idea was a gun that can see, so it has a camera. Then she was saying, and hopefully the supervisor in the precinct is watching what's happening and can authorize whether to shoot or not. Of course, the class shot her down and said, there's no time to be consulting people on whether you can shoot. Then she says, okay, fine. So I give them an idea. You can borrow innovations from other fields, like where I come from in Africa, if a lion escaped from the park, we can shoot it with a tranquilizer dart. We're not killing it. It's just fainting, and then we put it back in the park. And she said, okay, fine. So we make a tranquilizer type gun that will tranquilize rather than kill. And the beauty of this gun is it's a smart gun. You don't need to be a sniper. It has a camera. If I was trying to shoot George right now, I would just turn the gun in George's direction, general direction, and press the trigger. I don't have to aim because the gun has a camera that can see where George is. It can triangulate. If he's wearing body armor, it knows which parts are soft tissue. Then what I'm launching is not a bullet that goes straight, but a missile, a trajectile that can go in the air, follow the coordinates that are given, and land exactly where it's supposed to land. So I don't need to be a sniper. So this is what you might call a smart gun. I just turn and shoot. I just point and shoot, and it'll do the rest for me. And the most I can be accused of is embarrassing this person because I made him faint in public, but at least I didn't kill him. And it was, everyone admitted it was a brilliant idea. This time they asked her, why don't you patent it? You'll make so much money. You can sell it to NYPD, LAPD, the London Police Department. And she looks at me, I asked her, is that why you came up with this solution? She says, no. Were you trying to make a lot of money? No. What were you trying to do? To save lives. Now, if you patent it, then they can't use it unless they can afford your patent. And therefore, people will continue dying despite you having a solution. So why don't you just give it for free? And the class was like, no, don't do that. Don't listen to him. Don't give it for free. And then I asked the class, why can't she give it for free? And they said, because she'll never get an idea like this for the rest of her life. This is her chance to be a billionaire, millionaire. She'll never get an idea like that. So then I asked her, did you know 1 hour ago that you could have an idea like this? She said, no. Is it by chance that you got this idea or because you followed a system? She said, because I followed a system. So what's to prevent you from following it anytime you feel like? So this one you can give for free. The next idea can be to make your millions. It's entirely up to you. So don't listen to them. Look for Obama, present your idea to him, get him to put a team of ballistics experts and, biochemists to put it all together. But you've got the brilliant idea of a smart gun. The rest is just operationalization. So that's basically how I proved that the algorithm works, presented it in the Academy of Management in California, met some scholars from Germany who were impressed. They said, can we create a course out of it? We fly you to Germany, you teach it. I agreed. I've taught it 3 times in Germany, once in Uruguay. I've taught it in various places. And yeah, that's what we're talking about today, George.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Ogutu. Well, that's quite a story. So one of the big challenges has always been, especially in our universities and especially you being involved in the similar ecosystem, is how can we sustainably teach entrepreneurship? and how can we transform our campuses? And we have talked about this algorithm being that tool that can impact the entire ecosystem in terms of the teaching aspect of it. And you talked about it as a step-by-step, which the novels like us and many others can actually take, implement it, and to some extent achieve same outcomes that you have. So briefly, what are those steps? How can we know them, implement them, and how can we actually even be able to see that it's working, and how is it powerful in our own campuses, so that for us faculty teams can actually know, especially if we are going to teach, then we see how to teach it.
Okay, fantastic. So I hope by now people are curious about this system, which could help you to solve complex problems. So let's start. This system uses two techniques. One of the techniques it uses is psychological. So I remove the psychological obstacles that prevent you from innovating. And I create the motivation that is so strong that it makes you innovate. You've all heard that necessity is the mother of invention, that inventions don't happen just by accident. It's because there's a great need. People are in a tough place. They really want a solution, and then somebody innovates. So necessity is the mother of invention. So part of my technique is to create a necessity, to create such a powerful need and motivation in you that your brain basically switches on. And the other part of the psychological is to remove the limiting beliefs that we all have. Like myself at the beginning, when Todd would tell me, enter the competition. And I would say, but I'm not an engineer, but I'm not a techie. And at the back of my mind, I was thinking, and I'm not a genius. I'm not like these innovators. I had so many limiting beliefs, and I managed to get rid of those. And I explain in my system how to do it. And then I also explain in my system how to create that hunger that will turn your brain on. Before I go into the steps, I'm just explaining to you the psychology and the mechanisms so that when I give you the steps, you will see how I'm applying these techniques. When you have to study for an exam, imagine it's the beginning of the semester. Imagine you're a student now, not a lecturer, you're a student. You've decided this semester I will be a serious student and I will start studying on the first day of the semester. I will start studying for the exams. I don't know if you've ever made a resolution like that. And typically this is how it ends. You sit in front of the book, you open it, and then nothing happens. Your brain refuses to do the work. And you're telling your brain, I have to study for the exam. And your brain is telling you, but the exam is 4 months from now. Why do I need to do this? Then you're like, because I've decided to be a good boy or a good girl this semester. Then your brain says, the hell with that. I am not going to do useless work. So you read the same page twice, 3 times, 4 times, nothing's happening. You're studying so slowly that even you realize you're wasting your time. So you decide to just go and do something else. And that's the end of your resolution to study early this semester. Now, 2 weeks to the end of the semester, the exams are coming. You pick up that book. You're now studying faster than you were studying on the first day of the semester. Precisely 3 times to 4 times faster. Then, when it's now the day of the exam is at 2 p.m. It's now 12 o'clock. You meet a friend of yours who says, have you studied such and such a topic? Then you're like, but that's not coming in the exam. I thought he said we only study up to chapter 10. That's chapter 12. He says, no. We're doing up to chapter 12. You're like, what? I haven't even studied it at all. And you have 2 hours to the exam. Believe me, you will read that stuff for the first time. You will understand it immediately. and you will even memorize it and be ready to take an exam on it. And you only have 1 or 2 hours. So now you're studying 10 times faster than you were studying at the beginning of the semester. Why is it that your brain is doing work so efficiently now that it wouldn't do earlier? It's because there was no necessity. There was no need. So your brain refuses to do useless work because that's a lot of vital energy. Why would it waste it on something that is not needed? So it refuses to do it. So whenever you have an emergency, your brain switches to turbo and it moves fast. You start doing things you don't normally do and can't normally do. So if you could cheat your brain into creating an emergency, it will switch on and switch to turbo. So that's the first part of my technique. Then the second part of my technique is what I call cognitive. I'm looking at the order of the steps that you follow when you try to innovate. Unconsciously, most of us try to do the hardest thing first. And that's why it's so hard to innovate, because you're trying to lift a heavy weight that you can't lift immediately, and you immediately get discouraged. You're actually trying to visualize the final product, the final solution. You're trying to generate the final solution. That is absolutely the wrong way to do it, because it's the hardest way to do it, because in order to do it, you actually would need to be a genius, or you would need to be a serious expert, and maybe you're neither. And so, of course, you'll give up very quickly. So what I do is I just do like a switch. I sort of reverse the steps. What you normally do what you normally do first, I actually leave for last. And you will see how by using this technique, suddenly the problem becomes so easy to solve, you can't believe it. And what you thought was the hard thing is actually the easy thing. So I hope those two techniques are clear before I go to the step-by-step. So is everyone clear? One is psychological, and the psychological has two pieces. I remove your limiting beliefs that you need to be an expert and a genius. I convince you that you don't need to. And then the second one is I create an emergency. I create a need that then turns your brain on and makes it operate at turbo speed. And now we're in business. Then the second major thing that I do is I put your first step as my last step. And it becomes so easy, you can't believe it. So I can typically solve complex problems in less than 5 minutes. And I did it that first time for Google, but subsequently I've been taking about 1 minute. And again, you might think this is voodoo. This is, by the time you give us this formula, which you're still not giving us, we'll find it's a hoax. It's what people call snake oil, this thing that cures everything, but you realize it's a joke. So, well, I open myself up to criticism, and for you to tell me at the end of this next 10 minutes whether this is snake oil or whether this is real and it can work. I've certainly tried it on so many people and it's worked for them. I would be shocked if it didn't work for you and if you called this snake oil. So here we go. Step one, create a powerful emotional connection between you and the problem you're trying to solve. Create a strong, powerful emotional connection between you and the problem you're trying to solve. Now, I'm talking about you. I know many of you here have studied design thinking. And in design thinking, they teach you about empathy. They tell you, try and put yourself in the shoes of the people who are feeling this problem. You know, try and put yourself in their shoes so that you understand the problem. My step is different from that. So don't confuse my step with that step in design thinking, which is called empathy. I'm not talking about empathy. I'm talking about what would this solution mean to you? Not what would it mean to them? No, what did it mean to you? Like if you actually cracked this problem and gave me a solution, how would you feel? What would that mean to you? Of course, maybe it's not your problem. Maybe it's somebody else's problem that you're solving. So design thinking is wise by asking you to empathize. But what I'm saying is, maybe you're going to find the solution to poverty and to changing an entire part of your country, a slum that you grew up in or you live next to. You're going to turn it into a rich neighborhood. That sounds like an impossible mission. And you're thinking about it and you're saying, wouldn't that be nice? That's very hypothetical. But then how would you feel if you are the person who came up with that solution? What would it mean to you that you change the lives of thousands of people? You can see them living in relative wealth, having only seen them a few years ago in relative poverty. Like, what would it mean to you to know that you were the giver of that solution? And I can see you already feeling hungry, and the appetite in you, the desire in you is just rising. You know, as you're walking down the street, people are like, thank you, you saved our lives. You're the one who did this. And you're looking at these people who used to beg, and now they're the ones actually helping beggars and moving around and giving money. Like, what a beautiful scene. What an amazing picture. And to think that something you did would make that happen. So suddenly you really want it to happen. Like, you're so desirous to make this thing happen. Your brain is actually interested. It's no longer looking at it as a hypothetical problem. It's basically saying, I would very much want that to happen. And then somebody whispers to you, you can make it happen. You just have to follow the rest of the steps that Dr. Ogutu is going to tell you, and you could make it happen. You could literally make it happen. Do you really want to? Are you sure? Like, are you really sure you're ready to take step 2? And you're like, yes, I'm ready. I want it. I want it so badly. And that's what I mean by create a powerful emotional connection between you and the problem, not between them and the problem, between you personally and this problem. I want this to happen. And that will switch on your brain. Now let's move to step 2. Step 2 is express the problem in such simple terms that even a 7-year-old could understand the problem. Express the problem in such simple terms, with such simplicity, that even a 7-year-old could understand the problem. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about expressing it like fairy tales. No, I'm actually talking about explaining the problem so clearly that even a 7-year-old understands the problem in its complexity. So meaning he's not going to tell you some fairy tale. No, he can actually express the problem. You know, so he can tell, maybe you're trying to explain Ebola, or you're trying to explain malaria, or you're trying to explain measles, but you can describe it so accurately that that child understands what the problem is. So remember, I'm not talking about fairy tales. I'm talking about giving an actual explanation so that they actually understand what the problem is. And as adults, we find this so hard to do, but it is necessary for you to take this step. And I'll tell you why it's important. But first of all, I will play a little game with you. And this is one of my favorite problems to ask people to express. Imagine you're trying to express to your 7-year-old son or daughter what cancer is. Could somebody type in the chat or explain what cancer is? I'm suddenly 7 years old. I'm no longer 55. I'm now 7. I don't have a PhD. I don't have a degree. I'm actually just about to start school. I barely speak English. Please explain to me what cancer is. In simple terms, just simple. Type it in the chat. Have a go. Give me the simplest explanation that is not just simple, but also accurate. Like if I read your explanation, I would understand what cancer is. The challenge is on. Go for it, guys. Type in the chat. If it takes too long to type, you can put your hand up and George will allow you to speak. But type something. Type, what is cancer? So
Maybe,
I've typed the question.
maybe to save time, if there is anybody who wants to give it a go. Oh, I see one person.
Okay, Ajayi, that's pretty good, pretty good. It's getting close. Bernard, that's a bit too generic. Cancer is a disease that is painful and takes really long to heal. All of that is true, but I could say malaria is like that. I've got an Achilles injury right now that I'm trying to heal. All of those fit your description. I want something that if I read it, I know what cancer is. A multiplication of cells, Mary, you know, that's a bit too complex for me. Remember, I'm 7 years old, 7 years old. Abnormal growth, destroying the body cells and parts. Getting closer, but still too technical. Multiplication of bad cells, hard to stop and cure. It's all true, but not simple enough. I want simplicity.
I see one from Lauren. Cancer is a disease where some parts of your body changes and grows too fast or not the way it's supposed to grow.
Okay, that's a good one. Who said that?
That's Lauren Milwaukee.
Okay, that's pretty good. I mean, because it's a part of your body that is growing too fast, faster than it should. So Duncan, you saying it comes like a storm and changes very fast. That's very graphic, but it doesn't make me know what it is. Remember, I want to actually know what it is accurately. So a lot of you are accurate, you know, it lowers the body immunity, but you see, you're too complex. I want simplicity.
There is one that says cancer.
Lauren, yeah, Lauren, you're quite accurate. You know, it's a disease where some of your body, like a part of your body, changes and grows too fast and not the way it's supposed to grow. That's actually very, very accurate. You were saying, George?
There is one that that came from Ms. Jolene. Cancer is a monster.
Hi, Jolene. Good to know you're here. So what is Jolene saying?
She's saying cancer is a monster.
Yeah, it's true, but it doesn't make me picture it. I think Ebola is also a monster. There's so many things. SARS, you know, all these things are monsters. So it has to have clarity. It has to be specific. It has to be so specific and so clear that I can say, yes, that's cancer. That's not Ebola. So if you tell me it eats you, then I'm like, okay, you know. So when you say it's a part of your body that is growing the wrong way and growing too fast, that is correct. Because, and the way I would explain it, and now I'll give you my explanation, I would tell the 7-year-old, your body is so clever, it knows what it should do to make you become a bigger person. You remember last year you were short, we measured your height against the door. Now come, let's measure you. You can see you've grown, you're taller, but you still look kind of the same. I wouldn't confuse you for your brothers or sisters because it's still you, you still look the same. So your body is so clever that your small finger is still your small finger. Your longer finger is still your longer finger. They didn't grow like suddenly your shorter one is now the taller one. No, they grew, but your taller one grew faster than your shorter one. It's like they grow at different speeds. And so your ears did not grow as fast as your nose or as fast as the rest of your face, or as fast as your legs. So you can see different parts of your body are growing at different speeds, and your body knows how to control it. It's clever enough to know. But every now and then, a part of your body gets confused and it starts growing at the wrong speed. So imagine if your nose grew too fast. Now you'd have a very long nose like mine. Or if something here grew too fast, you could choke. Or if it's in your head, your brain could burst. Something wrong could happen. You could die because part of you is growing too fast. The other thing about your body is when the enemy comes in, like maybe an insect bites you or you drink some poison, something poisonous, your body knows the enemy has entered. And so it tries to fight it. But the problem with cancer is it's your own body that is misbehaving. So the rest of the body doesn't realize the enemy has come. It actually thinks this is part of me. This is just my small finger doing its thing and growing at a smaller pace, or this is my longer finger growing faster. It thinks it is your body doing the normal thing. But actually, it's a part of your body that is confused. And because it's growing too fast, it's dangerous. But your body can't fight it back because it thinks this is me doing something normal. That's why cancer is so dangerous. Do you all agree that I have explained what cancer is? A bit the same way as Lauren? A part of your body that is growing the wrong way, growing too fast? It's accurate. You wouldn't confuse it with Ebola, with something eating you. It's very accurate. But at the same time, it's so simple that the 7-year-old can understand it. So we have succeeded in expressing a complex problem in a simple way. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is magic, because we are no longer tackling a complex problem. If a 7-year-old can understand it accurately, then why are we calling it a complex problem? It's actually simple. So I've actually, on the cognitive side of my algorithm, I have dumbed down a complex problem. So you're no longer intimidated when you're approaching it. It's now a simple problem, and you will see why. Let's move to step 3. Step 3, ask yourself what people have been doing about it so far. You know, what are the solutions people are offering so far? Express them in simple terms, and then classify them according to pathways. The similar ones go into one path. The ones that follow a different kind of solution go into another path. So, in other words, summarize the different approaches that people have used so far, expressing them in the simplest terms possible, and expressing those approaches in the simplest terms possible. So try and understand what those solutions are doing. How are they working? How are they a solution to the problem that we described? And which are the similar ones? What makes them similar? Like, how exactly are they a common approach or a common pathway? Now, in case I'm not very clear, we can use the same example I was using of cancer. How are people trying to solve the problem of cancer? Imagine you're a 7-year-old. I've just told you it's a part of your body that is growing faster than it should, and the rest of the body doesn't know this is bad because it doesn't know there's an enemy, because the enemy looks like us. It's actually part of us that is confused. So we think this is one of us, so we can't fight back. We don't even think there's a problem when a big problem has just happened. So I tell this 7-year-old that, look, there's this thing growing on your neck and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. What do you think we should do? What do you think that boy or girl will tell me? In simple terms, there's this thing that's growing and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And if we allow it to keep growing, it will choke you and you will die. So what should we do? Give me typical solutions that we could think of. Type something in the chat. So Andrew says, cut it off. I agree. Julia, you say stop it, but stop it how? So cut it off is definitely a solution. This thing is here. I cut it off and throw it away. That's a solution. Look for drugs. So remove it. So actually, Lois, that's even simpler than Andrew's solution. So Lois says, remove it, which is a pathway. Now, there are many ways of removing, and we've been given one way of removing it, which is to cut it off. And actually, there are many ways of cutting off. Can you think of when adults use the word cut off in the case of cancer, which is a tumor using adult language? What do we call that cutting off procedure? So we call it, George, what do we call it? Surgery. Fred has answered. And how many different ways can you think of cutting it off? There are at least two major types of surgery that you could use. Amputation is one. So let's say this thing is growing in my arm or my hand. We could cut off my hand, and now the problem is gone, although we've created another problem. But yes, Caroline, that's correct. One way of removing is amputation. Then Dr. Lydia said surgery, but there are different kinds of surgery. There's open surgery, where we cut this thing here, we open, we remove the thing, then we throw it away, then we stitch it again. That's open surgery. But there's also, so George, we're going until 4 what?
We have around 7 minutes left so that we go to the Q&A.
Okay, fantastic. So when you cut in open surgery, you remove it, that's surgery, you stitch it up. If you do a very tiny incision, you send 3 tubes, one to see what you're doing, one to cut, and one to suck out what you've cut. That's also surgery, it's laparoscopy. But they are all on the same pathway, which is remove it. Remove it by cutting it off, by amputating, by doing open surgery, by doing laparoscopy. That's one approach. We've been given another approach, take drugs, chemotherapy. But a child wouldn't say that. A child would just say, poison it. Why don't we poison it and it dies, just that part? Fantastic. That's what adults call chemotherapy. We're basically injecting you with poison. We hope to kill more of the bad parts than the good part. If all the bad part dies first and you're still alive, then the good part will grow again and you survive. That's chemotherapy. Then there are many kinds of chemotherapy. So chemotherapy is a different pathway where you're killing the thing. And you can kill it by radiotherapy, by laser therapy. They're all different applications on the same pathway, which is kill it. Then Julia says, shrink it. Shrink it is a different solution. Make it so small that it's no longer a threat to us. So instead of focusing on killing it or removing it, we can just focus on different ways of shrinking it. And now we can look for technical solutions of how to shrink it. So you can see these are pathways. Now, the 4th step of my system is create a new pathway that is different from all the other pathways that you have identified so far. So come up with a pathway. Now, here's where you can get confused. I'm not asking for a final solution. I'm not asking for the product. I don't even want to picture the final solution. All I want is a different pathway, a different approach that is different from all the other approaches, whether we know how to do it or not. Don't focus on whether we know how to do it technically. That's not my problem at the moment. All I want is a different pathway. Now with cancer, your typical pathways are remove it, which is, surgery, cutting it off, amputation, open surgery, closed surgery, those are solutions on the pathway, remove it. Then kill it. There are various ways of killing it. You can poison it, which is called by adults chemotherapy. You can burn it, which is called by adults laser therapy. You can pound it, you can beat it up until it dies, which is called by adults radiotherapy. You're just bombarding it. And those are just different applications on the same pathway, which is remove it. Now, Julia gave us a very different pathway from the one people normally give you, which is shrink it. Like, can we squeeze it and make it so small that it's no longer a problem? Now, that's a different pathway. That's a new pathway. I would consider that as an innovative pathway. And we can discuss the final solution later. But right now, it's different from removing, and it's different from killing. You're actually not removing it from the body, it's staying there. You're not killing it either, you're just shrinking it. So it's a different pathway. Can somebody suggest yet another pathway that is not shrinking it, that is not removing it, that is not killing it? Any suggestions? And all I want is a pathway, a simple approach, not the actual solution, just a pathway. Anyone? I like the one for Julia Chigozi of shrink it, because it's not your normal pathway. So we'll count that as a new pathway. So congratulations, Julia. Billy says massage. I don't see how that solves the problem because this thing is growing.
I have a crazy idea.
Sure.
One of the things when you look at cancer, right? Whether you cut it, you shrink it, normally data shows that sometimes it grows back. Most of the time it grows back, right? And the solutions we already have, cut it, shrink it. But what if now we can find ways, because we have not been comprehensive in terms of understanding the human body. What if we can focus on looking at how we make humans become, accommodate if it is cancer. So basically we grow with it. It just becomes part. So the body takes care of it just as it takes care of some small diseases that we normally have. So we can live with it.
Okay, so type it there. Type it as a new pathway. Live with it. So, and we have Caroline saying sell it or trade it. I think in order to sell it, we would need to remove it. So even though it's a great idea to sell it for research, for instance, in laboratories that do research on cancer, but meantime, this person is dying. So you would have to use something like remove it, which has already been said. Then Lawrence says, prevent it from growing. So you find a way to stop it from growing. So congratulations. That's yet another pathway. So what we have done is we have hypothetically come up with solutions like isolate it. You could imagine putting it in a net and then it's living its own life in its own part of the body that is no longer affecting us, which might be a way of applying your way, George, of living with it. So if we could contain it and keep it out of trouble, then maybe Damari Sikalia is giving an application of your idea. Or, it might, it's definitely a way of living with it, although, and then Frederick said, starve it, so it stops growing. That's pretty good, but I think it's basically an application of kill it. You can kill it by poisoning it, by smashing it, by burning it, or by starving it. So all those are different applications of the kill it. And then the ones that sound to me like I've not seen too much happening on the research side is, so Moses, your answer is correct as well. Genetic mutation to accommodate it. If you say accommodate, then you're getting close to what George is saying. How do we live with it? But I liked the word genetic mutation because that's how the cancer is working anyway. It's the body getting confused and giving the wrong instructions about how to grow and then growing too fast. So genetic mutation would be, yeah, I think Jean de Dieu, you've taken the words out of my mouth. If we could program the body to do the opposite, to do the right thing, then of course it would stop growing. It would stop following the wrong instructions. It would now be following the correct instructions. So congratulations to all of you who've come up with new pathways, because that is what innovation is about. That is what thinking outside the box is about. Everyone is following maybe one of two pathways. Remove it, and if it dies or doesn't die, not our problem, but it's no longer in the body, so we've removed it, we're fine. Or killing it, and there are multiple ways of killing it, and that's what doctors have been doing so far. But that idea of instructing the body, programming the body, because we actually know what the human genome looks like. We actually decoded the human genome more than 30, 40 years ago. So 40 years ago, we knew how to do it, but no one thought of doing it. Everyone was following the same two approaches: kill it, remove it, better surgical procedures, better chemotherapy. But they weren't thinking of reprogramming it. And yet 10 years ago is when they finally thought of reprogramming it. So now we are 10 years into that research. We should have been 40 years into that research if somebody had whispered to them, hey, you doctors, have you ever thought of reprogramming the cells? They're like, no. But you know how to do that? They're like, yeah. We just didn't think of using it to cure cancer. Well, I give it to you for free. And that's my step 5. Step 5 is find a technical application on the new pathway. So that's the technical application. That's now the final solution, where we go to a biochemist, a pharmacologist, and a geneticist. We say, do you understand the human genome? Yes. Do you know how to program it? Yes, I have an idea. Can you actually take a cancerous cell and reprogram it so that it stops doing the right thing? They're like, oh my gosh, we never thought of doing that. Then you say, well, you're welcome. You can take the solution for free. Or you can say, I will employ you to apply my solution and I own the patent. So even though you're not a doctor, you've generated a new solution. Those who say, suppress it, then you now need to look for somebody who knows how to do that, and you employ them to apply your solution. Those who said starve it, although I think, Fred, they're already trying that. They know what it eats, what it feeds from. So they are deliberately starving it or isolating it so that it doesn't get access to what it normally feeds on. So you can see how what is actually technically hard to do, which is the final step, is actually the easiest to do because you just need to employ an expert. Why should you bother doing it? After all, we gave these experts 40 years to come up with the idea. It didn't occur to them. Now that it's occurred to us as innovators, all we have to do is employ the experts to apply the approach that they didn't think of because you gave it to them. So with my system, you don't need to be an expert. You just need to be intelligent enough to understand what the problem is. So you just go to an expert and you say, hey, what are you guys working on lately? They say, we're looking for solutions to cancer. Then you're like, please explain to me in simple terms what cancer is, as if I'm a 7-year-old. Then once they explain to you what it is, with all the clarity, so not stories, it's a real explanation, but simple enough for you to get a good understanding of what cancer is. Then you tell them, okay, I see what you guys are tackling. That's a pretty tough problem, very important one too. But how are you guys doing it so far? Explain to me in simple terms. and they say, well, there are these people who are, we have chemotherapy, different types of chemo, we have laser therapy, we have radiotherapy. Then you're like, oh, I see. You're basically, in some cases, removing it, which is one pathway. And in some cases, you're killing it. And you have different methods of killing it. Some chemically, some, physically, some with light, laser. I see where you guys are going. Now I have a map. I can see the boxes that these doctors are trapped in. And all I have to do is think outside the box. What does thinking outside the box means? Creating a different box. They are in the remove it box, and in the kill it box, I'll create the shrink it box, or I'll create the instruct it differently box. And now I hire an expert to actually give me the final solution. So ladies and gentlemen, that is the innovation algorithm. You might think it's snake oil, but we just proved it right now because most of you reached step 4, which is where the thinking outside the box occurs. So I'm open to questions now, George.
Thank you. Dr. Ogutu, if you permit me, I know we are out of time. Thank you so much for sharing the algorithm, the innovation algorithm together with the steps. And for me, the key takeaways is simplify things to see things clearly so that it can allow you to see what other things that we have not been covered. So in order to save time, I would like to encourage everybody. I know we are going to share this with every participant in this session. Maybe if you can allow Dr. Vincent, people can reach out directly to you in terms of understanding more, how to apply. And from your explanation, I think it's quite clear what we as teachers in class can start doing in terms of engaging our students to being entrepreneurial. So without further ado, kindly allow me, we have some few announcements from our communications team. And I see Dr. Ogutu has shared a link, and kindly feel free. Dr. Ogutu, if it's okay with you, you can also post your email, then anybody can actually reach out to you directly. So Frederick, for announcements, please.
Okay, great. Yes, so wanted to share one announcement about our next session, which is coming up on the 27th of this month in the Ethics and Leadership Community of Practice. Going to be discussing the role of student leaders in establishing ethical cultures within higher education institutions, and will be led by Shesi, Boto University and Rongo University, and facilitated by Nina from Shesi. So this is a session that you can register for, and the link will be put up in the chat. Andrew can share the link for this COP session that will be focused on ethics and leadership, coming up on the 27th of this month. Secondly, again, thank you so much, Dr. Ogutu and George, for guiding us through this session. And I'm sure there's so many questions and many insights that you've gotten. I especially appreciate the fact that if you simplify it, if you make your brain, also convince your brain that it's important enough by creating an emotional connection, that really changes things. So I'd like us to take a group photo just to capture this session. And I'm going to request us just to put on our cameras. You could put on your cameras. We're going to take a group photo. And I'd like us to smile as if we have just gotten a great idea that you want to present. We're about to solve for X. So in 3, 2, 1.
So thank you, Frederick, and thank you, everybody. Once again, thank you for taking the time. I know we didn't have a lot of time. Kindly feel free to reach out to Dr. Ogutu and ask in case if you want access to the audio, which I think we'll try to make sure that we share it with the rest of the team. And Dr. Ogutu will continue to be at your disposal to explain to you more about how you can implement the algorithm in your own institutions. So thank you so much. Wish you the best for the rest of the day, and I'll see you again in the next session. Thank you all.